What's up, everybody? It's your boy John coming at you with another Epic Collection review. This time, my Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5. I just finished this. Took me about 3 days to read, just because of time. Volume 5, 1968 to 1970, and this covers issues, focus, 68 through 85, and annual number 5. Just a straight shot run of some of Stan Lee's classic stuff. Now, what's interesting is in this volume, John Romita had been drawing the last few volumes. I don't remember exactly what happened at the end of volume 4. It's been a while. But in this one, he actually has different art duties. I'll show it to you later. But first, we get the annual, and this is drawn by Larry Lieber. Now, Larry Lieber is actually Stan Lee's brother, which is the cool part about this. They work together. Larry Lieber did quite a bit of work at Marvel Comics. Actually a very good artist who doesn't get enough cred compared to some of the others, but I mean, I really enjoy the expressions on his faces. I think his figures are really well drawn. His layouts are very nice and clean. And I had a very good annual here. Now, this story was very interesting. Peter Parker discovers that his parents, he thinks they were spies for the commies, and turns out they were working for Red Skull, and then he goes to investigate that. Very fun, very good twist at the end, all the way around. Excellent annual story. I didn't want to put this one down. It was a 40-pager. Very happy. We call this a pinup, even though it's got some dialogue in it. It's pretty fun. And then we get some Peter Parker dreaming of what could have been if he was a sports star, and then a little map of kind of where things are at. And some extra fun stuff. What if Spider-Man were different characters? Funny, he'll be a Spider-Ham later, which kind of is a little interesting like that. And then a little silly comic strip about the Marvel editorial and bullpen. Pretty good. Great way to open up the Epic. I was very excited to read that. Larry Lieber's art was absolutely phenomenal. And then we get into a very famous cover. This is one of Spider-Man's probably most famous covers, Crisis on Campus. And this is where the title comes from, The Secret of the Petrified Tablet. Whoops! I really need a tripod, so I don't have to do this with one hand. I had one. I don't know what I did with it. And that's been the bane of my existence lately. Oh, well. Eventually I'll get some lighting and stuff too. Could you imagine if I used like real lighting and had like a real YouTube channel that was fancy and stuff like that? Excellent. All right, we'll fix that in edit, guys. All right, so here we go, and we get to the credits here, and I'm gonna show you. It says storyboards John Romita, so he's doing layouts, and then Jim Mooney's credited with all the illustrations, and then we get the lettering by Sam Rosen, of course. Now, they don't credit colorists in this era, so I'm going to show you kind of what they mean by layouts, because we have various layouts that get used. So they're actually pretty good. I mean, if I had an artist turn in this level of pencils on anything I was working on, I'd be pretty satisfied. So I call that a little more than just layouts. It's pretty good. Maybe just call it loose pencils, maybe. But the gist of this story is that there's this like tablet that's gone missing, and Spider-Man's trying to find it, and this group on campus is trying to get a whole like what are they trying to get done? They're trying to get like a low-income housing built or something like that, and they're protesting. So pretty innocuous protest for 1968 or whatnot, but they're showing the cultural times of the protests and things like that without getting overly political and dragging people down with it. But the Kingpin realizes there's this tablet there and it's got some secret to it, and so he steals it. Spider-Man goes after it, and we actually have a continuing story for a few issues. I think I actually skipped through 2 issues on that. On this, I really like this cover, the Spider-Man Wanted cover. And Kingpin tricks everybody into thinking Spider-Man's colluding with him, and Kingpin goes to jail during such. We have the relationship between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, kind of as the soap opera element plot, and she's always wondering what Peter's doing. She calls him a coward throughout this entire book. He's always running away. What's his deal? And it's all right for right here. As I'll tell you later, it kind of stalls out over the next 20 issues and gets a little boring after a while. This Petrified tablet storyline was pretty fun, and it goes through issue 71. Is that it? I thought there's more to it than that. Yeah, I think there is. Spider-Man then fights Quicksilver in a one-off. And Quicksilver, Quicksilver's trying to be a hero and joining the Avengers at this point. He was an X-Men villain before this, but he wants to prove himself, so he's going to do so by capturing Spider-Man. And then we got the Shocker showing up in the next issue. And the Shocker is breaking in to try to find the Petrified tablet. So we're back to the Petrified tablet storyline again. This goes for a while. And it's surprising how long this goes for in these issues. We get a, quote, new villain here called Mountain Man, or Man Mountain Marco. And he's just a, rough and tumble fighter kind of dude. He's looking for the tablet also to bring it to his boss. And we have just this whole fight for the tablet here going on. And he works for the criminal organization, the Magia or something like that. I don't know. It's something that's been running through Spider-Man and Daredevil during this era, and they're like a crime syndicate mob group, basically. And as it alludes to, the Lizard's about to show up also. So they hire Kurt Connors, who's the Lizard, to translate the tablet, which is an ancient tablet, after they receive it. And if you could check it here, I just like something about what happens in these middle issues here. I just find, while this is fine, I just find it a little less impactful than the John Romita stuff of the last couple volumes, art-wise. It kind of all just feels flat together. It's a little less dynamic, I guess. Oh, very important. Harry Osborn gets a Fu Manchu mustache in the middle of this. And here we go. The Magia boss realizes that, learns that it's a like serum or whatever that gives him the secret to the Fountain of Youth, and now he's like 40 years younger or something. And very nice cover again. The covers are really well done through this. I think John Romita does all of them himself on the covers here. And then back to the Jim Mooney breakdowns. And this wraps up the whole Petrified Tablet saga. There's a twist to it that's also pretty good, just like that twist was in the annual. Pretty good, and it continues with this like Lizard issue where Kirk Connors is back as the Lizard, and Spider-Man has to wrap up fighting the Lizard again. All right. And now that continues. Very interesting. They're like decompressing the storylines, and it's fine. But it's interesting. You see the layouts for a lot of these issues are a lot of them have 4-panel pages like this, which was pretty unusual. If you look at the first several volumes, they're pretty dense in terms of the panel counts, and so these issues go by a lot faster, and the storylines don't finish quite as easily. You also note that Stan Lee's dialogue has drastically pared down from what it was just a couple years prior. It's like he wanted these to really read a lot quicker, and changed his style significantly. You'd almost think it's a different writer at this point. And so the Lizard gets his sort of deal done. Pretty good. Wraps up again. It's a basic Lizard story, and this has happened a few times in Spider-Man. And this is going to be my main complaint of the volume. It's like, the Shocker came. He's already fought the Shocker before, knows how to deal with him. The Lizard came again. It's the same scenario again, where he kind of ends up with his family again. And, just a lot of repeats. Now, we finally get a new villain here, which is a breath of fresh air. And, again, we get almost a 4-panel breakdown. And Flash Thompson comes back into town. He's in the military at this point on the soap opera end of things. And Peter Parker always thinks Gwen's flirting with him. And she's actually just trying to get info on where Peter's running off to all the time. So there's a disconnect. Peter gets mad and breaks up with her. It's all mad at Flash. And the Prowler gets his origin in the middle of this. Turns out he's just a guy kind of down on his luck, trying to get things done. And then the next issue, that continues along. with this, like I said, sort of decompressed storylines. And here's a little breakup thing. Jim Mooney does do a good job finishing off the Gwen Stacy here. She looks pretty. And we have our Prowler fight and the end. And then we get the Chameleon coming back. Now, the Chameleon, I'm looking for one certain page in here, but I haven't seen it. But the Chameleon dresses up like a couple different people, including J. Jonah Jameson, and Spider-Man has to kind of deduce who it is and bring him back. And now we get into a series of one-off issues. I was looking for, there was an issue that was, where there's actually a dialogue box and it says, fear not, we're not going to do continuing stories anymore. I guess they were getting complaints about that Petrified tablet bleeding into too many issues. But I didn't find the dialogue box at this point. It was in one of those issues that we just passed. But I liked the continuation. I found once they got back into these single issues that they really, it just kind of became formulaic and not as interesting as what was developing before. And the soap opera really stalls out at this point too. Gwen and Peter fight. She thinks something that's not happening, or he thinks that's something that's not happening. They figure it out. Repeat. Worried about Aunt May's health, and oh my gosh, is Gwen's father, Captain Stacy, going to find out I'm Spider-Man? And that's where he's at. It's very, very, very formulaic. Kangaroo's got I don't know if this is his first appearance. I think it is. They give a little origin backstory in here. Just a very uninspired character. That wasn't very interesting. And now we get Electro back, which we just saw the Shocker. So we're getting multiple electricity villains. Like I said, it's just kind of, it feels like they're just treading the same ground. Outside of that outside of the beginning with the Petrified tablet, and of course the Prowler was kind of its own thing. But beyond that, like a lot of it just feels like filler issues. Like they don't know where they're going with the story, and like I said, the art is just not quite as dynamic as it was when it was Romita doing it all himself. Even though the layouts are his. Sometimes he gets credited as innovator, sometimes he gets credited for storyboards. I very much wonder where that came in. And then we end up with another three-part story to round out this thing. They kind of got away from that. And this is interesting, not really for Peter Parker's relationships here, because it's kind of more of the same on that level for this issue. But this schemer is trying to take over the territory, the Kingpin. And we get, in this issue, no, we don't. Issue 83 was, was actually somebody else. It was not Jim Mooney doing the interiors. It was Mickey Demio, who I don't recognize the name. And just kind of flat style, I think. I really can't tell much of a difference between his art and the Jim Mooney art, to be honest. So that's why I passed it. Very similar in tone. And there's a twist here for the identity of the schemer who's going after the Kingpin. Why is he the only guy who can get far fighting the Kingpin? I'm trying not to give away the twist, because the twists are really what make these whole stories pop. And so if you want to read this, I'm trying not to tell you what's going on. Now, there is a bit of a development here where Gwen and Captain Stacy actually go into Peter Parker's apartment, and Peter does a really silly thing. He says, I need to go develop film in my darkroom. And he goes out the window, comes back as Spider-Man, and he claims he's looking for Peter Parker. It's like, that's pretty camp. I started to feel like this whole scene was feeling like that, like Adam West Batman silly at this point. Which really was not the tone of Spider-Man in volumes up until this point. So there's a little bit of a letdown towards the end of the issue here. I did like the Kingpin plot with the Kingpin and his wife and the schemer and how that all ended up. I think that was a really nice development for the Kingpin and that cast. But yeah, there wasn't enough going on in Peter Parker's life to be all that interesting in this volume. So it's a bit of a letdown from the last volume. They can't control the contents, but that is what it is. Last volume was probably one of my favorite epics. I'd say volume 3 might have been even better than that. But there were a lot of cool dynamic things going on, like when Gwen Stacy originally showed up, the Green Goblin, and all that really just fades here. I think the villains are much less inspired. Even the Kingpin, I don't find all that interesting. He's kind of a one-trick pony, just like, I'm a bad crime boss, arr. And so, you know, the family dynamic thing was interesting in those last issues, but that's about it. So this is the Spider-Man epic. It's a quick read because of those 4-panel layouts and Stan Lee dropping down the dialogue. That's the pacing was a lot better. The art was less inspired. The stories were less inspired and a little stalled out, like I said. So, but it wasn't bad by any means. This is still a lot better than a lot of modern comics. So I would have to call this like a 7 out of 10. Enjoyable, but the worst of the original Spider-Man epics so far. Volume 1 with Ditko's art, of course, is just innovative. 2, 3, and 4 are really the sweet spot where Romita and Stan Lee are just doing amazing things. And this feels a little less amazing, that's all. So good plot with the Petrified tablet. Really loved the annual, and then it just kind of fell flat. So let me know what you thought of this era of Spider-Man. Love to hear from you. And leave a comment and like and subscribe. I will be back with more reviews later. Bye, guys.